Oh, what's going on? What's going on, brother?
All right. We in here. What'd you say? We in the place to be?
There's only one place to be. That is
Yeah.
to be here. Absolutely. Guys, what's up? It's Community Beacon. Appreciate you all for checking in each and every Friday. We drop these episodes at around 6:30. This is a pre-recording, but I'm excited to be here because we just got to make it happen. Being the productive people that we are. Of course, I'm Mike Seville, one of your co-hosts, and of course, on the other side of the screen, we got the brother from another mother, the incomparable Joel Simmons of the
Thank you.
Tenacity Foundation.
Thank you,
So,
sir.
always a pleasure to be in the presence of the brother, digital or
Like,
otherwise.
likewise.
Um, so here we are. No real, no real direction, but I know we'll get going and get it started and going soon.
Yeah,
Um, I think you spoke a little bit earlier before we got on about some of the things you have upcoming, and I think just a quick preview of what you have planned in the next couple of months because I think for the community, it's going to be awesome. So I don't know if you want to divulge anything at all. Just a
yeah, sure.
I'm
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because it's community focused. And so that's what got the drive. So on April the 6th, we have a event. It's going to be at the United House of Prayer for those of you all who are local to Riviera Beach. The address is 3333 Avenue I. The time will be 6 p.m. You're welcome to come out. We're having a competition with young people, and I mean, it is the talent in there is awesome. I expect to have a video up soon on the auditions. First audition, second audition, we should have that up. So you'll be able to catch that on the Tenacity Foundation YouTube. And you're welcome to come out. We're inviting everybody. 104.7 is supposed to be out there. We have, I believe the mayor is going to stop through. The police chief and his crew is coming by. And we have, oh my goodness, we have a bunch of other local authorities that are coming out to be with us. Multiple organizations, the Palm Health Foundation, Federation Family, Tenacity, Mr. Trombone is going to have some appearances from some of the people within his circle, if you know who he is. And there's a bunch more. There's a
What's the age group for the youth?
So for the youth now, granted, anyone can come out. The young people that will be performing, they're from 7 to 18.
Okay.
Now, we're talking about we have dance performances. There's a competition for dance. There's a competition for singing. There's a competition for instruments. So whether we have bands there, we have soloists, we have choirs, we have soloists, So and we have groups that are dancing. So it's gonna be awesome. We have judges gonna be there. It's gonna be awesome. You definitely want to be there. And if your young people are looking to learn more about music, you want to be there because there's going to be an awesome opportunity to network with some of the people that can help your young people get where they need to be at when it comes down to singing, dancing, or playing an instrument. So definitely going to have opportunity for all the young people on this occasion.
And that's April 6th.
April 6th, 6
What?
p.m. at 3333 Avenue I, Riviera Beach,
Okay, so
33404.
that's a Saturday. Yeah. So you all, if you all are he said local. You don't got to be local. If you if you feel inclined to go from wherever you are, then that gives you ample time to make arrangements. So April 6th at 6, that sounds awesome. And then you have another something that you're putting together for men.
Yes, yes. Coming up within the next 30 to 45 days, we'll be looking to start a men's group. Um, we're still working out a few little things, but look for it. It's going to be called The Gathering. It starts with me, the gathering. And this is a men's group. It's a biblical inspired men's group. And we're inviting everyone to all men to come on out. Age groups. We're looking for men that are like 18 to 35, maybe even in the 40s. Honestly, if you're a man, this will work for you. If you're a man, it's from a biblical perspective, so keep that in mind. We will be speaking from the Bible. And I encourage everyone to come on out. I'll get you more information about it, but it starts with me, the gathering. I'll send some posts out soon on my IG, jsimmons.tenacity, and you'll be able to learn more about it. All right.
Awesome. I think lovely situation. Always good to have, get men around men. I think we started to lose some of those spaces just in the community. So I think that'll be awesome, biblically based. So guys, go check it out. Next, what you say, next 30 to 45 days. So I'm really putting the pressure on them. Is really what's going on.
That's okay. It's coming,
Yeah,
man. It's
yeah.
coming. It's
We
coming because
really, allowed the
it's
brother
got
to
to
speak.
happen.
Yeah, yeah. So awesome. I think it's awesome. I think there's a lot of in the zeitgeist in the system as if there's not. Personally, I think there's too much talking online going on when people can get around, go locally and get around people and actually be there and participate. Not take something from something that comes online and through whatever form, and then kind of just take things out of context. This is something
Mhm.
for you. You get to go in there. You get to ask the specific questions that you need answered for you, or you get to participate and give your specific experience. And so when that happens, then you movement starts to happen versus kind of debating and arguing on theory. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of that goes on. It's like, oh well, such and such says something in California, on this, did it, and and I always say nothing happens in a vacuum. So there's so many things that lead up to this. Now, I'm not saying that a lot of the things that human beings go through, it doesn't resonate with us because we're human beings, right? We're having this experience, so things are going to resonate. Certain feelings, certain thoughts, certain occurrences, etc. They can resonate. However, there's also context, and I think sometimes we don't put things into proper context. And when you don't do that, then that becomes a narrative. And narratives can be scary, they're dangerous. And what's interesting about narratives is that they affect you when they may not necessarily have anything to do with you. As they used to talk about in the old police films, etc. It's like when they just messing with you, they say, "Oh, you fit the description." You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And that's what a narrative does. A narrative allows you to fit the description, although you might not necessarily have the experience or you weren't involved. So we got to be careful about the types of narratives that we push. But a lot of these narratives come from not understanding the context or the pathology of the people. And I can go on and on for that. What I would do is give you one tip is that's why you need to get to know people. If you have the opportunity to know a little bit more about someone, then and you have the opportunity to present that, then do it. That is connection, which is interesting because and this all makes sense that I'm saying this because I am working on connection and as a value and connecting as a quality. So, um, yeah, get out to the gathering, and as we get closer to the time and the date, of course we we'll put it out here on here. As long as we have these platforms, we'll put it on this platform because these things are good. I don't know, brother. What do you want
Love
to get
that.
into? What do you
Man,
want to get into today?
you touched on something right then, right there. And I'm going to share with everybody a scripture. So it's in the book of Revelations. This is what, when you were speaking, it touched me, right? So in the book of Revelations, the 22nd chapter, verse 13, it said, I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, first and the last. And this is what this is what I mean. When you said what you said, it affected me. I was like, narratives. People get stuck in narratives. Whose
Yeah.
narrative? Who wrote it? Who wrote the book? Joel Simmons. Who wrote the book? Michael Seville. Who wrote your book? You know, and then while you were saying, I was like, I'm thinking about it. And by the way, not just who wrote it, when did they write it? Did they write it after you died? Did they write it while you were living through whatever you're going through? Did they write it before you were born or before you had the opportunity? And I think those are three major things we should think about when we think about the narrative of our own life. Like when I think about Jesus saying, I'm the Alpha and Omega, that's like the beginning of the Greek alphabet and the end of the Greek alphabet. So it's to say, I am he who wrote what is, right? When we think about time, and I don't want to go off on a tangent, but I love talking about time. When we think about time, time has been considered to be a linear thing, but it's not, right? It's not linear, because God doesn't see time. God, he has nothing to do with time. It's like, Jesus Christ, the same yesterday, today, and forever. So what on earth? What does that mean? Right? And how can he know the beginning from the end? If time was relevant, how can a day be as 1,000 years if time was relevant? So in the space where God is at, time is irrelevant. In a space where we are at, time has become relevant because at some point in time, quote unquote, man began to recognize that as time passed, the body degraded. As time passed, certain things need to be accomplished. As time passed, crops were able to grow or crops died. As time passed, seasons came. As time passed, certain stars began to show. As time passed, they recognized things. So they started to mark time in order to better prepare themselves for whatever the day may bring. That is powerful. Time is a tool that we use. And many times we are expressing how we have no time. Like I said, I get off on a tangent when I start talking about time, but I want to reel it back in because I think that the conversation is more about the narrative. What is the narrative and who is writing your narrative? Are you writing your own narrative? Are you behind the wheel of your life? Or are you sitting in the back seat? Or are you in a car, a fifth wheel in the back? What's going on? Is somebody delivering you to your destination or destiny? Destiny is the place that you desire to be or the place that you believe you should be. And the destination is the place that you desire to be or desire to go to. So you want to get to a destination and you're following your destiny, but who gave you a destiny to get to that destination? And it's like, man, narratives. Okay. Yeah, we got to talk about that right there. So I'm just I'm opening up the box. I know I kind of laid it out like Pandora, but let's go.
Yeah, you definitely went on a couple things, and I went off on that tangent with you. I thought that was awesome. Time is a tool, and what's interesting is that a lot of these different tools we tend to think are the is the goal. You know what I mean? Like the saving time, the make this time, and it's really just a tool to hopefully better prepare you for whatever it is that's your intent. Um, it's a standard of metric. It's just a standard. It's a standard metric to be used as such. So that's an interesting thing for us to really dive deep on. Uh, you mentioned it being it's not relevant versus relative because it's relative, but it's not. It doesn't necessarily have to be relevant. So I think that's it. That's another interesting gem that was dropped. And then coming back to the narrative, here's the thing with the narrative is that it's there. And so when I think of the narrative is something that was there prior to you. You don't even you don't necessarily have to contribute to it. It's there. It's available. Some people, some historians would say that, as far as, and we use it to separate things and people and etc. So that's why I'm going to go into this example, is that the narrative for black men in society was around 1916. And so in
Woo!
1916 they had a film, and it's escaping my mind right now. When I think about it, I'll bring it back up. But essentially it showed like this scary hypersexualized black man. And so from that point in time, the narrative on the black man has kind of been, uh it took off on its own with no with no input from the people. Now, what now kind of pushes the narrative is the media. So you'll have from the 60s and the 70s, what was going on there. There were certain eras, 80s and 90s, there was a certain era that was going on there, up until now. So a lot of, and so what happens is that a lot of us get a chance to look at these different narratives. Now, here's the thing, and this is why I don't, and this touches a little bit on codependency. However, I digress. The thing is that we get a chance, like the brother is talking about, is to create a narrative. We for for the past couple of months, we've really been diving into identity and certain and stable identity. But this is another reason why you should have a certain and stable identity. This is another reason why it's important to have both parents in the household. And to have your child to see these different parents, is because there's something, and I'll speak on fathers. There's something about a father being around that allows the child to kind of do things that they wouldn't normally do. And I'm just speaking from the experience of having right now he'll be 3 at the end of this month. And I mean, I seen this kid get climbing a coconut tree the other day with no fear. And the reason and the reason why is because he knew I was there. And the closer I got, the higher he would go. So he started on the base and he started climbing it. Now, let me get back. Get back into the narrative. So there's a narrative that was created, you know, and accepted. Let's just say it was created and accepted on a whole in the media. It's interesting because sometimes we look at these narratives and we can say, well, you know what? This doesn't apply to us. If we really got logical about it, we can say this doesn't apply to us because we don't necessarily have these experiences. My mother wasn't a crackhead. My mother was a loving mother that worked hard. But in this narrative, it says that your mother is this. But the wanting to belong and in a culture kind of steers a lot of people towards these different narratives. So even though you don't necessarily come from it, there may be a lot of love at home. There's a hardworking father, mother at home. You're wanting to belong and not having a stable identity to this culture. The cultural narrative kind of pushes people in that direction. Now I want you to ask for yourself, like, especially between the ages before your brain is fully developed. So let's say between the ages of 14 and 23, 25, really, you between the age of 14 and 25, think about some of the things that you did or are doing, and then see how it fits into the cultural narrative versus your individual what's exactly going at home. Culture can be a very, very powerful thing to kind of suck you in, especially if you don't have anything to stand on. That's why it's important for any and everybody to have their certain rule and guide, and to do like, because let's be honest, it takes some knowing and understanding to break away. It takes a lot of knowing and understanding to break away from it. Um, Yeah, brother. And I see it because I have a 13-year-old, and I'm seeing the way that he wants to dress. I'm seeing the way that he wants to wear his hair. I'm seeing the way that he the kind of things that he talks about. And a lot of these are because of the cultural narrative. because he's not necessarily getting it at home. He's not getting it from me per se because I got a ball head, right? But he's getting it because he's going out into the world. Oh, there's a scripture, be in the world and not of the world. So he's good. So we really have to. So the narrative is what the world is presenting, and then you have a chance to actually create and be intentional about and establishing what it is that you are. What do you say about that, brother?
Man, I say that's all right. You on a roll. You're on a roll. I'm right there with you too. Especially when at first I was going to say, I want to, I'm thinking about just like adults and everyone. But then you went down this road with young people and the narrative, because it's like the narrative is what we place on young people. It's what has been placed on us.
Right.
Started talking about how, at a certain point in time, you don't have the capacity to really, nothing. Nothing. You don't even know how to develop your own thoughts. Every thought that we get in the early years of our life, there's thoughts that are given to us. We're given these thoughts. We don't even know that we're thinking. Everything that we're building, the building blocks of the youth, of that, of your 3-year-old, the building blocks of the 3-year-old is to do, is to hear, is to be. That's it.
Yep.
There's really nothing else.
Yeah.
There's nothing else. That at 3 years old, you are doing whatever you do at the time that you do it without any concern about you doing it. And you are hearing, you are constantly attempting to communicate with the people that are around, with whatever that's around you. It could be a dog, a cat, a horse, a person. It could be the pillow on the couch. Your communication is, does that pillow talk? It's like, can this pillow respond back to me? No? All right. I don't like playing with pillows. How about this dog? Slap the dog. The dog responds. Okay. This dog is not like a pillow. This dog is different. So I shouldn't even say here. I should say communicate. Do communicate, right? And then and lastly, it's just whatever it is that you're gaining, that response. So you mentioned that word fear, and I was like, man, that is powerful. That is powerful. Fear, because your son, he doesn't have any fear to climb this tree, and as a father, your heart may be beating, because it's one thing when he's 3 feet up, 5 feet up, maybe even 7 feet up, like, yeah, I can catch him. But at 10 feet, you start to think, that's 3 times his height. We're talking about a trauma alert if I miss him. And the higher he goes, the rationally, with all of the thoughts that have impacted us personally over the course of time, and next thing you know, your son, who has never fallen off a tree before, has never felt the impact of it, has none of these things have ever happened, but now we insert the narrative of what had happened when we climbed up a tree. Did my mother, did my father yell at me? No, you can fall off. But I never did. No, if you fall off, you're going to hit your head. Your brains will spill all open. You'll die. And you're like, that sounds bad. Yes, right. It's bad. You'll never be able to see your dog again. I'll never be able to see my dog again. I don't even know what dead means, but never seeing my dog again. That sounds bad. And so the narrative is now born. If I ever climb that tree and go too high, then I will probably fall off. And even though I never have, falling off means that I lose my dog, and I love my dog because my dog is different from a pillow. My pillow does not respond. My dog does respond. I love my dog that responds. I won't climb the tree because climbing a tree means I lose my dog. And I live my life that way forever until the narrative has changed. I have just created a
If it
fear.
ever, I was saying if it ever does change, right? Like,
Unless there's rewriting. Thank you.
yeah, yeah. If you don't rewrite it, then we're talking about. Then you start to associate that to other things,
Yes.
right? Like, and let's be quite honest, it's not even the pillow and the dog. It's you'll never see mommy again. I've heard people say that countless times. If you do X, X, and O, the people will come get you, and then you'll never see your parents again, or your brother again, or your sister again. So now it's like really deeply embedded. Now we're talking. Now and this is whoa, because now you're getting deep, brother, because this is the beginning of the fear of loss. So now this is the trigger. This is the opening of a neural pathway of the fear of loss. And and i'm and i'm in spaces where you got people that are as young as probably 20, probably 20s. People start to get this thing in like late 20s, and then all the way up to, I'm talking about 70-year-old people in these different groups. And we got 70-year-old people that have, and now it's like super embedded. Like, because Tony Robbins always says that people just get, the older you get, the more rigid you get, till
Mm.
until the point of where you reach the absolute rigidity, which is death. And so it's like you got people who are 70 years old that are working on, and if you ever did mess with NLP, then you can really go into re-imprints, changing these different structures. A lot of talk therapy deals with this stuff of what happened when I was 2, 3, 4, 5 years old. So now think about the amount of time that's passed to where you did that voice, and you don't even really remember that time. More people, a lot of people don't remember that, 2 to 3 years old when that this situation happened, or 4 years old. And so now having to recreate and re-imprint that time of hearing this voice, that, oh, no wonder I didn't do this because of fear of loss. No wonder I didn't trust or believe in myself because of fear of loss. Now, the interesting thing is that our parents, or your parents, or adult, or person in power, is not doing this to 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 deter you, or to make things worse for you. They're doing it out of their wanting safety, right? They want to see you safe. Like, oh man, if he's climbing this tree now, if I don't tell him this, maybe he'll climb it when I'm not around. Maybe he'll get it. So everyone, more, I think most people have like the best of intents in order for this to happen. So this is not a blame your mother, father, whatever type deal. This is more of just of the awareness portion of, this is how these things start. This fear of loss. Then you get into some people who have fear of abandonment, for what they lost their mother, they lost their father, they lost their dog. You know what I mean? The dog didn't go. The dog went to the pasture, whatever it is that we tell these people, as opposed to giving the information so that they can process it. Because one thing about children that we don't really give them credit for is that they're way more resilient. You see children, and they're bendy and they're flexible and they're in nature. So children tend to be a lot more resilient than adults because they haven't built all these things up. There's another book a person can take a look at, which is called The Body Keeps Score. That's an awesome book for you to understand how a lot of these different traumas and these different things happen, and it affects your body. This is why and then we don't stretch, so we really don't get rid of all these different things. So these things, your body is actually taken into account. These traumas, and I use trauma loosely because it has such a horrible connotation to it. But these things that are happening to you actually take effect into your body. And if you really don't have a healthy way of releasing it, you know, stretching, whatever, you know, whatever forms it is, they just build up and build up over time. All
Mm.
right, brother, I interrupted you.
No, 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 no. It's good. We're just communicating,
Yeah.
right? So I was thinking about something though. I did want to mention, you know, and it's that it's not always fear. Sometimes it's absence. Absence. I believe that absence is a big thing as well. You know, ignorance. Um, Hosea. Hosea in the book of Hosea, fourth chapter, sixth verse says, "My people are destroyed because of lack of knowledge." And it's like there's an old saying, and I don't remember where I heard it from, so it's unknown, and I can't tell you if it was a true saying or if it was just an example. But it was as simple as this. I believe that my previous assistant told me that this was a story that was given, and it was very simple. Um, a granddaughter, I think it was a granddaughter, went into the kitchen. When she went into the kitchen, um, she saw her mother making a meatloaf. She made the meatloaf, has this huge pan. She made this meatloaf, and she takes the meatloaf and she cuts the end of it off, and she puts half the meatloaf in this pan and puts it in the oven. The other half, she just throws it away. And her daughter's like, "Why are you doing that? Why are you doing that?" And she's like, "Well, that's what my mother did, you know?" And so she said, "Well, why?" And the mother said to the daughter, um, "I don't know. Let's call up grandmama." And grandmama's called up. And so the granddaughter is on the phone with her mother, and the two of them asked the grandmother, like, "Hey, grandma, whenever you make meatloaf, the recipe you showed me, you know, you always cut the half that you cut the meatloaf off. So and then you cook it. Why do you do that?" She's like, "Oh, honey, that's an old recipe." And they say, "Well, but why?" And they're like, "I don't know. Well, I learned it from my mother, and her mother happens to still be alive." So they call up the great grandmother now of the youngest one. And now you got the grandmother, the mother, and the daughter all on the phone with the great grandma. She's 90 plus years old. She's been around for almost a century. And she's like, "Grandmama, great grandmama, when you taught me how to make meatloaf, you always used to cut half of it off. Why?" And she's like, "Oh, because we only had these small pans." And they're like, "Oh, because the pan was too small. They didn't make a large enough pan in her day. So she would cut it off. She didn't even throw it away.
Right.
She just had to cut the meatloaf because whenever she made too much, it wouldn't fit in the pan. And so all those years, decade after decade, somebody learned how to do something incorrectly because they never asked a question. They never fixed the issue. And it wasn't until somebody who didn't know anything at all actually asked the question instead of just repeating what they saw. They asked it. And so the lack of knowledge, awareness, sometimes it's the simplest things of why we do what we do. It's because I saw mama do it this way. That
Right.
makes it right. I was just happened to catch like 5 minutes of this show the other day, Mike. I was sitting down, I was eating, I was like, I'm gonna turn the tube on while I eat. And I don't remember what it's called, but it was an old movie of Adam Sandler. And they wanted him, he was a water boy, and they wanted him to play football.
Mama said,
That's the part. So he gets into this room, and some guy dressed up like the Colonel from Kentucky Fried Chicken, and he's like, "Why such and such and such?" And he's like, "Mama said," and I mean, he's just cutting him down. He's like, "Mama was wrong."
Mama said. So let me ask you a question. So here's the question: Is are you saying that we should question the reason it is why we do things, or the information that's presented to us?
I'm saying that yes, we should consider the source of the information, where we're getting it from, and that we should seek out to understand why we get it. Not necessarily that we should question it. And I'm phrasing this in a way because I don't think that we should be disrespectful to the source, right? If I'm getting information from Mike and I trust Mike, but I want to verify what Mike is saying, then I don't want to question him as in, Mike, you're wrong. But it's more of, Mike, I want to understand. Because Solomon said, with all thy getting, get understanding. So don't just get to have. That's a fallacy that we have in this world today. It's like, I just want to have. And I don't even know the reason why I want to have. Maybe I don't need. So get understanding.
All right, so that's interesting because I totally agree with you, and honestly I question everything. I just because I'm seeking understanding. I'm seeking to understand more. I don't think questioning is disrespecting the source. If the source feels disrespected because you're questioning, then that's gonna make me even more curious as to what it is. I could understand in a in, if in a crisis situation, like yeah, hey, just if Joe say it's time to run, then I'm running. Like I'm not questioning it. If it's hitting the fan and Joel or Lou, let's say Lou's like Mike run, I'm running. Like I'm not questioning it, and I might go about a mile down and say, what are we running? What are we running from? But it's not a questioning. So it's not questioning. I don't because I don't see questioning as disrespect. I think that's interesting. I think that's because we've been brought up. I think there was a time when we were brought up, especially elders, like you don't question your elders. You just do. You kind of do as you're told. And there's a time and place for it. Of course, so this all goes back to context. So there's a lot of context for it. I think when you start to become a certain age, you do have to ask these different questions because we're being presented with different information or all kinds of information. Like right now, there's no lack of information, right? Like there's no lack of amount of information that's out there. So the more so for us to have to figure out, okay, this is the source. Don't be disrespectful in the way that you're going to approach it. So maybe not being disrespectful is saying, okay, I hear you. And then if you're curious about the matter, to do your own studying and to gain understanding, but just not to be able to question authority, I think that leads us down an interesting path because it's been that way for a long time. And now, specifically over the last uh 60 years. So 1960 to 2020 is really what I'm counting. From 1960 to about did I say 1920 or did I say 2020? Oh my God. 1960 to about 2020, the last 60 years, um, the lack of questioning and the lack of seeking understanding has led us to an interesting path for everybody that's concerned. And so and here we are.
Yes. I think Mike, I think that leads us to a deeper conversation too. And I know we're out on a tangent at this point in time, y'all. So I apologize,
No,
but
no.
it's the context of the question because just a question alone, I don't feel as if there's any negative connotation towards that. But the context thereof, or the way that a question is presented,
I
sometimes
was just saying,
it
yeah.
can allude to that. For instance, my son, I
Jonah.
love,
Shout,
I'm like,
shout out to Jonah.
so he's been brought up in a questioning era. My eldest daughter, she was not. It wasn't a lot of questioning. It was more of you just gonna do this.
Mhm.
Nah, we not have. I was very old school when I had her, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
I mean, there's a difference of what like 10 years or something like that, 12 years between the two of them, and there's a huge difference, a decade of difference in me,
Yeah.
in this guy, not in
Yeah.
not and of course in them. So he's been brought up in a questioning area, but it got to the point where the questions were, you know, oh, I don't. It wasn't that I don't believe what you're saying. It's like, let me change your mind, you know,
This
and
is Jonah?
yes, yeah.
Okay.
It's like it's like, okay, well, tell me why. Dot dot dot. Now you understand why, so go do it. Well, it's like, hold on. The question was not opened up to have multiple conversations, because now you turn this into a debate. This is totally different. It's like, I'll give you the information so you can understand why, but it doesn't change that you need to walk out of the house with shoes on your feet and
Right.
take the garbage out. Why you need to put shoes on,
So
you
just
know,
just in this example though,
right?
is is that barefoot is technically more healthy than, than putting your shoes
Right.
on.
So when I tell him because it's raining outside, because you hadn't cleaned the dog poop up outside, because it's dark
I
outside,
don't want you bringing
because
it back in the house.
yeah, because there's rocks outside, because you're dealing with glass from the recycling bin, and if you drop, so now and these are all of those things that we just discussed, all of my concerns, all of
Yeah.
my concerns. And now I have to elaborate. Not that this would happen. Not that because you walk out there in the dark, you're going to step in the dog poop. Not that you're going to drop the glass and cut your foot. Not so now it's like, okay, now that I'm making you aware of what I'm thinking about, the bottom line is that you at least need to put on some flip-flops. You know, that's
But
it.
you know what I've noticed with especially because Elijah and Jonah are pretty close in age, real close in age. Um, is a lot of the questions for me, anyways, that I'm noticing with Elijah. A lot of the questions, a lot of the horse playing, a lot of the stuff is really him, just his way of wanting to bond with me. So we can have like, and and I noticed it because I was like what are all these questions about? Like, do the dishes, but you want to come and sit in my at first it was like, you want to sit in my doorway and talk to me about these dishes. And by the time this conversation is done, in my mind, I'm like, you would have already finished doing what it was that I asked you to do. But then the more that I sat there and I delved into it, I said, wait a minute, because he's still, he's still he's becoming this man, right? So in his mind, he's like, I'm becoming this man. Um, and then he's looking at me and he's like, well, but my father's not, my father's not overly, you know what I mean? Like overly, I'm not an overly hugging type person, although I am hugging him now because I told him, I'm like, I don't want to
Yes,
see you. I
yes.
don't want to see you on Jerry Springer or one of these talk shows talking about the reason why I did this was because my father,
Daddy never hugged me.
my, my dad never hugged me. But I digress. I started noticing is that, oh, he's doing this to have these conversations with me. Like he subconsciously, this is what he's craving, is this interaction with his father. And so, not to look like we would say punk back in the day, not to look like a punk, because he still got to be tough, you know what I mean? Like Elijah, this, he still has to be, feel tough. So I'm not gonna hug dad. I'm gonna grab him behind his neck and just and fake choke, choke him. You know what I mean? And so I started, and I play with him now. I'm like, oh, you just wanted a hug. Just give me a hug. Just give me a
Oh,
hug.
he's only face choking you because Jonas tried to. He
He
laid
not, he
out.
not trying to lay you out. I told him one time. I said, "What if I said, "What if I pass out? What you gonna say? I didn't know." Like I mean, like I didn't know. I'm like, so you got to be careful of the horseplay. However, like these things are these kids attempting to do it, and I remember it with my father. When my father was around when I was young, 11 to 12, and I distinctly remember one time because I got a crick in my neck, I tried to headbutt him in his stomach but it was really just me wanting to interact with my father. So I think and I'm not making I am making a huge excuse as to why Jonah doesn't want to put shoes on and go take the car out. But I think a lot of it also has to do with these different things and us as parents. You going through 20 plus years of parenting and noticing that, man, that 12-year gap was a huge, I changed and I grew as a parent. I think a lot of the older parenting I call now, and I don't want to disrespect the elders because I love them too. It's like lazy parenting. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, you just and that's that domination communication. Like you just do as I say, do as you told, not as, what's the saying? Do as I say, not as I do, or something like that. Like just do it, as opposed to okay, which I think is a more powerful communication if we're talking about persuasion, which is the connection. Connecting. Versus you correcting, which is, and all of these aren't bad. Like I'm not. I think everything has a place for it. Like I mentioned, domination. If you hear something, glass break downstairs in the house, and you say, "Hey, everybody, get in the room," you don't want the question end up like, well, if I come to the room now, should I, should I go use the bathroom for whatever it is? Like you just want to get in the room because there's a safety situation going on. But in these conversations, when we go back and look back on it to say, okay, so how would we handle this differently? Because this is a part of mastering our moments and mastering the intention. Is like, okay, this is coming up again. Like it may not be the exact conversation with Elijah or the exact conversation with Jonah, but there's going to be something that's very similar to it. So how do I connect? How do I and be compassionate and empathetic and also transfer this information I have, which is like the real wealth, is the transferring of information and wisdom, really wisdom and experience. How do I transfer this information so that, going back to the Bible verse, our people don't perish because we, you and I have a lot. So how do we transfer this to them in the midst of all of these things going on? And the same way we treat them, because you said we were talking about kids, is the same way we treat adults. Because the reality is that there are 60 and 70-year-olds that still need Joel Simmons to have the gathering so that they can get some of this information, and they want it. But how does a Joel Simmons or Michael Seville connect with these 60, 70, 50, whatever age it may be, just like we would connect with our children,
Mm.
right? As opposed to, domination, which they're used to. But what ends up happening, especially for certain people, is that it becomes a debate, like you mentioned. Like it becomes a debate. Oh yeah, well, in my day and your day, and I saw this dynamic with me and my father. Like I'm like, and then it's like, oh, okay, well, how do I connect with this guy? That's close to 7 years old. That's not, and it's not like they're not they're lacking intelligence, right? They're like, these are intelligent people. However, since we've established this way of being for so long, these newer pathways for so long, they're strong. However, they are looking to us because there's no time involved in it. Like you mentioned from the beginning, there's no time there. It's not linear. This is just like just steadily gathering all this information, and that makes the people powerful. You know what I mean? So how do we connect on that aspect of it? And I think that's going to be an enjoyable, and I think as you and I move forward, like this is like the joys to me of this as we start to go into it. Because and I'm going off, so I'm gonna give you my quick experience. I was really kind of pissed off at human nature for a while. Like I was just, you know, like really, like common, that we use that saying, the common sense is not so common. Like this was on a day-to-day basis.
Mm.
And I remember someone came up to me and they said, because they were having an experience with someone, they was like, hi, I just can't be around, quote unquote, dumb people or something like that. And this is what this this was being told to me. And I remember, and there's a conversation on the phone, and I'm sitting there like, in my mind, I'm like, well, I'm on the phone with you, so the same way I got it. Say, yeah, Lord forgive me, but this is the thought process is just like, because I, and you know me, brother, I take in so much information because it's just that's my way. I've done it since I was a kid, right? Like books upon books. I remember when our library in St. Francis, which is in Rivera Beach, they were closing down, and I remember the teacher came and got me, or a librarian, I'm not sure which one, and they brought me in, and it was like, you can take whatever books you want. And I was just like, what? Man, I packed up on so many books because and we were going into like, I was just like, give me this, give me this, give me this, give me this. So just been accumulating information since then. Then I went to college and at FAM, and I had to go to FSU because FAM's books library was just too small. When I went to FSU's library, and because FAM had like a 2-story library, and on the bottom was like a study hall. FSU had like a 5-story building, and I was just like, holy crap! Like, and every book, books that were, people wouldn't even think about picking up, I'm just picking them up. Leadership, all these different a lot of gang books I picked up, a lot of gang books, reading up on, like the what is it? The Japanese have the what's the Japanese gang called? They got the Chinese are triads, the Japanese. Anyways, long story short, picking up all these because I'm just trying to understand organization. You know what I mean? Like these are doing it. So I've accumulated all this stuff, and I still do it up until this point. So I have all this information. So this person on the phone is telling me how he can't be around people who don't have as much information as him, and I'm looking at it like, man, like so but I'm preaching empathy and compassion, etc. But the joyfulness is in us, because I know you do it too, because you're always in the book and always studying and always, even just you're always studying and getting into it. And then I'm sure people can tell from watching the show, and you're very, very good at it, to hear what people are saying and saying, okay, as we move forward into this next phase of our life, how excited and joyful and happy and loving it's going to be as we move forward with all this information. And now we're getting into the nitty-gritty of how we're going to communicate this information, right? Like oh, everybody doesn't have it. We do. How do we start to give it to the people that need it? Definitely starting within our own households. You know what I mean? Like that. Start, someone said, from your loins down. You know what I mean? Like that's the biggest impact that a person can make. And then as we start to move out into the community, to your neighbor, then to your neighborhood, and then to your city at large, or town at large, then to state, whatever it is, and we just steadily are able to release that information. I think we're in an awesome place, in order to be able to do that.
Yeah. I think one of the answers, if there may be more, but the one that came to my mind was just the communication. Getting all the way back to the very beginning, do communicate, be, it's just that communication. I think that's real important. But and you were mentioned, we both were talking about it. I think we've been talking about this for the last few shows at the very least. But you were mentioning the time being nonlinear. And when you stated what you stated, you were referring to your father, you know, and then you were talking about how he's near 70 and you went down that road. And I'm just like, that's it. That proves to you
Yeah.
time is non-linear because he was operating out of something that happened before you were born. And when you were speaking with your sons, you were operating, Elijah, you're operating with something that happened before you were born. And it's the same way with me. You know,
Yeah.
it goes back to our example about how, you know, the few examples when you were first talking about the coconut tree, the coconut palm, I think it was. And we started to talk about the example of how sometimes people are operating off of what their parents had taught them or what they had learned. What was communicated to them at some point in time caused them to become whoever they were. So our identity, it is identified by what has been communicated. When we first are born, we are doing. That's it. You just do. What do I do? Anything. Because there's nothing in here that bars you from doing whatever.
Right.
You have not, there's no, you mentioned neurological pathways. There's no neurological pathways. Your brain is soft and it's mushy and it is constantly creating crevices, pathways of knowledge. It is gaining you open your eyes and you're taking in colors. You don't know that they're colors. You're taking in smells. You don't know that they're smells. You're taking in feelings. You don't know that they're feelings. You're taking in taste. You don't know that it's taste. You have no idea because you know nothing. You
Right.
just sensations and you're constantly putting things together. You got the pillow versus the dog. They can look exactly alike in your eyesight, but then one of them moves and you got to figure out why it moves. Then somebody communicates dog. Dog, say dog. Now you're not only you're trying to figure out what is the difference between a pillow and a dog, but now you're also trying to frame the words, and you don't even know what framing the words is. You don't know what a tongue is, a mouth is, gums are, no clue. So we do before we be. I mean, essentially we be because we are, but we do in order to become whatever we will be. And it's based off of whatever's communicated, not just verbal, but any type of communication, whether it's visual, scent, touch, you know, taste, or hearing, whatever it is, or even feeling. That is all coming into us, all these communications. This is our narrative being written, whatever is communicated to us, the knowledge that we receive, how we receive it, how we display it is what creates the being that we become. And we're always becoming. Some people, maybe they feel as if they're no longer becoming, but that's not true. I don't believe that. I believe you're becoming something. You just may not be becoming what you desire to be. If you sit on a couch and watch TV, you are becoming whatever that is, whatever it is. If you're out there and you're jogging down the road until you get faster, you're becoming whatever that is. If you're reading the books with Mike in the library, you're becoming whatever that is. Whatever it is, we are becoming it at all times. Whether we have a desire to become whatever it is, destination versus destiny is something totally different. Can we control our destination? I believe we have a lot more control over our destination the older we get. You know, we can set a visual expectation, a verbal expectation, a vision. We can envision ourselves as something, and then we can create yes. And then we can create the
Yeah.
type of lifestyle that will get us there. So now our destination is a point in quote unquote time that we're destined to get to. How? Because we are always becoming and we are looking for the communication, the knowledge, the education, the wisdom, to become whatever it is. And so this is how I feel we can rewrite our life. We can create a narrative or we can change a narrative. We can blot out the old, we can write in the new, whatever it is, because time is not linear. And just like I pull back from yesterday to create a better today, I can also pull from tomorrow to make my today better. I can visualize my tomorrow and set my today up so that my present is always developing to something greater. I can be whatever I want to be.
You have a choice.
We have a choice.
Awesome book for a person to read, especially when we're talking about creating our future, is Maxwell Maltz Psycho Cybernetics. That a lot of what we hear now, and then what people would call woo woo, the Tony Robbins, the even NLP, a lot of NLP, we definitely talk about what we call the NLP future pacing. But Maxwell Maltz kind of talks about the theater of the mind. And when you listen to a lot of these different guys, Maxwell Maltz just happened to put it in that book form. So if you all want to check that out, Maxwell Maltz Psycho Cybernetics. Some other good listening and reading is Dale Carnegie, The Secret. I think is it no was Earl Nightingale, excuse me. Earl Nightingale, The Secret. Awesome. Someone put me on that for 30 days, listening to it for 30 days straight. And every morning you get like a different something different out of it for them to, like anything you do. So that you put intention into. So those are some things for you, some resources for you to go check out. But I'm absolutely with you, brother. I think it really gets down to the specifics of it. And so listening to us talk about it, it's different, not just to have compassion for people, because we've been doing it for a while. You know what I mean? Maybe it wasn't taught, but we've at some kind of way, I think most of us have kind of it was nurtured into us in order for us to start to kind of go that way. I definitely got some professional mentorship and help with it. However, I was doing this before before I got it. Now I just said, oh, okay, so this is there's a science to it. There's some stuff in the Bible as well that you can check out that it kind of talks about it as well. But I think for most people is, you know what, and I'm gonna talk about it, is that what was interesting. A lot of us read the King James version of the Bible and don't have the proper understanding of it. And a lot of things that Earl Nightingale, James Allen, Dale Carnegie, a lot of these guys are taking. Bob Proctor's another one. Um, a lot of this stuff comes from that book, and probably in most of the holy books, probably uh, the Quran and the Torah, etc. It's important for you to find people who are able to kind of guide you in these different directions for most people, because most people aren't going to spend the time to do a lot of the research needed. And once again, the internet is chocked full of information and different people. And sometimes I'm scared to refer people to certain things because you're going to misquote or they may take you someplace else. And if you don't have a strong base, which goes back to the identity, etc. If you don't have a strong base, it's no telling where you end up. Especially if this is emotionally fueled. And a lot of people tend to start to look towards things when they're facing different crises in their lives. Some people, if it's comfortable and like they're fine in the comfort, and they don't look for this information. I've noticed that a lot of people tend to look for these informations when they start to have certain life crisis or life
Altering.
yeah, well, what does the IRS call it though? um Life changes something. I don't know, the IRS has a word for it, and I'm saying that because it's almost taxing, so I hope you all got yours done. I spent a month, man. My accountant was, man, I can't stand that guy right now. And I got one more meeting with him next week. But long story short, is that a lot of people look for it. And so when you're emotionally, these things are happening and you going along and this information is being given to you, you can easily go down some interesting paths. You know what I mean? So now if you're having this information and it's kind of piquing your interest, it's important to get around people who are going to guide you in the right way. That it's not necessarily in it for them, or they're trying to funnel you to a certain kind of information, because next thing you know you you, you join a cult or something. A cult or something. I'm serious, and it happens a lot, and now you're 10, 15 years in and you don't know how you got there. You don't know how you got there, but nothing happens in a vacuum. um so for those of you that are looking for this stuff, and brother, I don't know if you're still mentoring or etc. Like, you got to go to a brother like this that they're like is gonna listen and kind of say, okay, well, this may kind of point you in the direction it is that you need to go, versus you know really falling off track, and heck, sometimes people never really come back from it. um I think that had to be said, and a lot of the things that and I try to be very careful about the information that I put out on this platform, because really, for me, this platform is for my kids, my legacy, so to speak, and I want them, when they go back, not to be sucked up going in a crazy direction because of certain things that I say, because they don't understand the context of what and why I was reading certain things.
Mm. Yeah, I like that. I like it. Psalms 119:9 said, "Wherewith also a young man cleanse his way by taking heed unto thy word, O
Mm.
Lord." I think when I first heard that scripture right there, when I first heard that, it gave me the understanding. It's like, for me, for y'all out there that got some other rule and foundation, then it is whatever it is for you. But for me, with my foundation being, the Almighty God, like that was it. Like, okay, so I'm lost out here in information lane. The world is wide, filled with information. How do I get it together? Okay, it's like that. It's like this bridge behind me. When I say when that scripture's like taking heed to thy word, it's like just walk the one bridge.
Right.
Got to bring it in. You got to get onto a narrow pathway, because there are a lot of distractions
Yeah.
all over. And the thing about it, like, when you start to think about, the Garden of Eden, and you think about God was walking with Adam and Eve in the garden, and then all of a sudden, Eve starts talking to this dude called the serpent, and he asks her some questions. He's like,
That's how it all starts. They
that,
start
that's
asking you questions.
and he asked her questions that she knew. What did God tell you about eating? She's like, I can't touch it, I can't eat it. And God never said you can't touch it. So right then and there, you knew that she had a disconnect with what she had been told. The communication, there was a disconnect, and that serpent slid into the disconnect and replaced a couple of words and added a couple of words, and then her eyes became open with desire to do something different than what she had done before. And that was right outside of the path, right outside. It's like if you walk down this bridge and you stay in the middle, you won't get wet as long as there's no tide, as long as it's flat. And you're like, okay, I'm walking down. And then here comes a little mermaid that says, well, it's not that you won't get wet. It's just that if you get wet, then you won't be able to dry off because you don't have a towel. It actually feels good out here. And they're like, huh. So it's really just about me it's not, I don't have a towel to dry off. Okay, jump in the water, and next thing you know, a shark comes and bites you. Something crazy, right?
That's a heck of an analogy. Let's switch mermaid for sirens. So you hear
Okay,
the voice, you
go
hear
for
the
it.
voice of the sirens.
I
But
don't
go
care if
ahead,
it's a
brother.
mermaid or a siren. He might say it to me. If a mermaid was talking to me, I'm out of there. Y'all get it out there. Hopefully you get it. The whole point is it's just that when you
Yeah.
get, we just have to, it's the communication. You're always doing something. Whatever the communication is you're taking in, the knowledge you're taking in, that's the pathway you're on. There's a lot of other adjacent pathways. Many pathways look just like the pathway you're on. Make sure that you are in the right place,
Amen.
right time, doing the
Yes.
right things. And
Yes.
if you're not, it's a cornerstone moment. I hope y'all go out and watch my show on Cornerstone. That may be a cornerstone moment for you. And if it's a cornerstone moment for you, it's time. Take a breather, take a break, meditate, pray,
Amen.
do like what the brother said, seek out expert advice, figure this thing out. Because whenever you hit a cornerstone moment, it is a time for you to make an adjustment.
Mm-hmm.
I've run into these situations before. At one point in time, I associated cornerstone moments with depression because my old lifestyle kept wrapping itself in my new lifestyle. And I didn't realize it because not even conceptualizing that time is nonlinear, but that it is infinite.
Yeah.
I was looping back through old emotions. And though I read in the dictionary, emotion is a conscious mental reaction. I think that it can also be an unconscious mental reaction. And an emotion is a state of being. So when that linear moment, that non-linear moment came around, my thought is that the emotion that I felt back then is what I'm feeling now.
Mm.
And I took what I had before and I placed it in a current situation, and I applied the same exact thought pattern as I did before, and there was nowhere to go. I was lost because I thought I was in depression. It was a cornerstone moment.
Come
But
on.
what it really was is it was a time for me to be alone, to discover that it was time for me to pivot. I needed to change directions. God needed me separated from distractions
Yes.
that I could see and I could feel and I could interact with where I needed to be. Sometimes we're in the right place at the right time, but we are replacing the right time with an old time, and that old time has an old mind, and it will not work.
Mm. Yeah. We're done. That's enough for y'all. That's enough. Listen. When the brothers on, the brothers on, the brothers on. I'm telling you, listen. There's just it's something about being aligned.
Mm.
It's something about being aligned and grounded when you aligned, because if you go back and look at my Facebook post from months ago, I just wrote one word. I put separation.
Mm.
And then you'll start to see, and if you can, whittle through it, you'll start to see some other things, alignment. You'll start to see like these separate words. A lot of people didn't understand what it was, but it's exactly what the brother is saying. And oh my gosh, there's so much we can dive into that for a long time, because what you just mentioned there, brother, and you being able to make the distinction between, and I like what you called it the cornerstone moment, but you being able to make the distinction between, oh, this ain't This wasn't depression. Because a lot of people can say, because we may believe that, oh, it's depression, and then you know try to get into all kinds of motions to get out of that depression, as opposed to saying, okay, now making the distinction to that, I need, this is a point of separation, and I get to make an adjustment, because if I don't, possibly I'm going to see this again. Right? I tell you, I heard someone say you learned a lesson. So a lot to unpack in that last phrase. I want you all, if you all are checking this out, please, if you went through this, if you've gone through this before, or maybe you're going through this now, if you're a young person, because life it just it be because you might be going into that, right? If this might be the first time you're going into it. Um, but this information is critical. This information is critical because now you have the information, and so now you can make the adjustment if that's the path that needs to take. Man, brother, I appreciate you
Yeah,
always.
likewise, man. Yeah, yeah,
I appreciate you always. This was an awesome, awesome, awesome show. I'm telling you guys, we didn't know what we were going to talk about, but when you just get when you seek an understanding and just open to it, these things happen. So
yeah.
I don't know any. You said some words, but do you have any last words?
Yeah, hey, man, I think that's good. I like what you said. You said we're gonna close it on that.
All right. Appreciate you all. We will see you next week.